Welcome to Fun with Annuities, where every single week I welcome a celebrity guest expert that can help you maximize Chapter 2 of your life. Listen, learn, laugh, and love every minute of the most unique financial podcast on the planet. Let's get to it. Welcome to Fun with Annuities. I'm your host, Stan the Annuity Man, America's annuity agent, licensed in all 50 states. So proud to have my guest in the building. The Savage Truth is in the building. She's coined some great phrases like chicken money and savage truth and money lay. I mean, she is royalty when it comes to the financial services business and industry. And she is looked upon as a go-to source for the consumer, which is the reason she's on this program. So without further ado, welcome my good and glamorous friend, Terry Savage.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stan. This is interesting times we live in. I love that introduction. You know, part of what I have more in common with you than you with me is I've been around a long time. Yeah, don't be fooled by this. There are some gray hairs under there.
No.
I was, founding member of the Chicago Board Options Exchange. So that'll take you back to 1973, the first woman trader on the floor. And very rarely are people listened to, like you don't listen to your grandparents kind of a thing. Who have been through this before, and I've been through a bunch of these cycles. And it's so weird to see it coming around again. What coming around again? Well, 6 months, 8 months ago, I started telling people, don't put your money in CDs in the bank at 1.5%. Buy Treasury bills. They're 4% 6 months. Now they're over 5%.
Correct.
This thing about inflation, which nobody sees creeping up, I saw that coming, not because I'm such a genius, but because I saw that before. And what do I see coming now? I see two things. And then some longer term trends, which I hope we'll talk about. But I see a recession, a different kind of recession this time. You know, the things that hurt you most are not the things you know, the things you don't know, but the things you think you know that aren't so. And we have a whole generation out there of, I'm just going to lump them in as techies. That means they're a lot smarter than I am. I have to call them up when I need help. And they're major league businesses. I'm not demeaning this. But they thought they were invulnerable, that society could not run without them.
Right.
And now we're seeing a whole raft of layoffs. Maybe down the road, just like the horse and plow were put out to pasture by the Ford and the trucks, maybe we're going to see some of those jobs put out by artificial intelligence. But right now in this economic cycle, a different generation is about to learn a lesson, and it's going to be a painful one. So I worry about that in the immediacy. And then, well, we can talk about the markets later.
I think it's interesting. I look at this recession coming toward us. I think it's going to recalibrate a lot of things. I think that college will lose a lot of value. I think people are going to figure out they can be an electrician, a plumber, a pipe fitter, a welder, and make 6 figures a year coming straight out of high school. And I think we're going to go back to the trades in a big way. I give a lot of credit to the Mike Rowe, who has that television show.
Yeah.
And he's done a good job with that. He has a foundation. But I think that the degrees that mean nothing in college and paying $70,000 for it, this is getting ready to hit a crossroads for people. And I think that, the work environment in general is going to change. But like everything in this country, we change for the better. Crisis hits us, we change. Yes. We learn from it. We get better from it. And I think we'll come out of this recession better, because I think we'll kind of move toward some hands-on work. You know, people talk about AI and artificial intelligence getting rid of jobs. You can't, artificial intelligence can't do plumbing.
That's right.
Or air conditioning in Florida. And so I really believe there's going to be a renaissance, for lack of a better phrase. I really hate that, because renaissance, talking about blue collar jobs making 100,000 a year or more, where people can really put food on the table, and it's economic proof. Because you and I both know, Terry, we both have houses in Florida. If you're an air conditioned person in Florida, economy means nothing.
Exactly.
You're going to be busy.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think the real key point you just made, Stan, that we share, and which is why we like doing these together, is well, as Warren Buffett said, nobody ever got rich betting against America.
Mhm.
And the desperation to hold on to the past
Mm.
keeps you from leaping ahead. And I think that's what we all want to do as in our individual lives for our children, maybe grandchildren, as investors, is to look ahead and recognize we've been through a lot of different tough times. I mean, just in the last 40 years, I can think of a lot of them. In fact, I wrote a column. Let me explain just for a second, Stan. I have no clients. I write a nationally syndicated column syndicated by Tribune Content Agency. My website is terrysavage.com.
You
I
have to
take no
go there. You have to
advertising,
go
no
there,
click
period.
through, no links. I post my columns there. I have an Ask Terry blog. I put lots of links and articles about like everything you need to know about treasury bills, how to buy them, or I bonds, or
Mhm.
wills and estate planning, stuff
Sure.
like that. And because I've been a trader all my life, and full disclosure, was a young trader on the Mercantile Exchange. And for the last 20 years, I've been on the board of directors of CME Group, Chicago Mercantile Exchange. So what you get from me is not about me trying to sell you anything. And I just posted a column. Boy, I'm going to try and get back to it because I talked about the fact that in the last 40 years, it's called Money, Markets, and Fear. And I put it up on my screen here. Let me just tee us up here. Not only have we been through things like, well, we came out of the Vietnam War, we came out that huge recession in 81, 82, the prime rate, which you never think about anymore, was
Mhm.
important then, was 21%. T-bills were 13%. We
Mhm.
suffered through that because we had the massive inflation of the late 70s. And then, I wrote this in the column, in 1973, 72, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was under 600.
Yeah. Yep.
57.01. I was there on the trading floor. I remember that. And look where we are today. In 2008, the markets were down dramatically. In 2001, the Dow was below 7,500. I'm reading from this column at terrysavage.com called Money, Markets, and Fear. In
Mhm.
2008, that's not so long ago. That's that housing crisis and the mortgages and everything. In 2008, the market crashed and it dipped from over 14,000 2007 to 6,500. Okay.
Mhm.
And in March of 2009, and in the pandemic, I got scared too. That was the last time I was really scared. I thought this time it's really different
Mhm.
as we shut down. And the Dow fell to a low of 18,591. And last I looked, we're still over 33,000 on the Dow. So it tells us two things. First of all, don't bet against America. If you have long-term
Correct.
horizons and you want,
Correct.
I mean, you don't have to be a trader. You just have to be there and be the market. And second of all, those panics all reflected moments when even sensible people were thinking, oh my gosh, it's over. But this coming recession or this impact on tech companies and in jobs in particular, whatever comes this way, there are a couple of other things looming on the horizon. Um, if we're America, we will get through it. Don't bet against America. So that's the
Absolutely.
opening for that.
Absolutely. Someone asked me the other day, what's your hope for America? And I thought for a second, I said, to retain our resiliency. If we continue to do that as a country, I'm fine. Sometimes I question if we have that, but we do. We do. In this recession, we'll get better from it, and we always get better from it. Now,
Yeah, by the
interestingly,
way, we're not in a recession. And in case somebody's out there going, wait, why are they talking recession? We've been
no,
waiting.
I know
Oh,
that the coming proposed whatever, but as you know, everything's customized. I always tell my clients, whether it's inflation or an upcoming recession, I ask them, okay, how is it affecting you? You can watch as much TV as you want and CNBC as you want and Fox Business as you want and read as much as you want. But at the end of the day, it's how is it affecting you? Do you have enough money to weather the storm? If you do, stop complaining. And I tell people that all the time. I had a gentleman the other day. He had multiple millions of dollars, and he said, "What are we going to do about inflation?" I'm like, I don't know what everyone else is going to do that it's really hitting them, but for you, you need to be quiet because you're fine. You're going to be okay. I know there's some things coming up on the horizon, Terry, with I bonds and things like that I need you to kind of weigh in because there's some timing issues. Now we tape this a couple of days out before it goes live, but can you kind of cover what's going on with rates? Now, here's the precursor with that. Nobody knows where rates are going to go. We're not rate predictors. Interest rates, they could go the other way. If anyone knew where interest rates are going, they're not going to be talking to you. They're on a jet trading interest rate futures. So with that being said,
or they're sitting in a very beautiful office in Washington, D.C., and their name is Jay Powell.
yes, with bodyguards all around them. So go ahead. What's the consumer need to look out for right here?
Okay, well, let's back up a little bit about this banking crisis for a start.
Yes, please talk about the banking crisis.
Banking crisis. Let me just take you, I'm sorry, but perspective is everything. Let me take you back to 2007, 2008, when, remember, they were making mortgage loans to people that had no income, that practically didn't exist. Waitresses and bartenders in Las Vegas were owning 3 homes with no money down, kind of a thing. And those chickens.
Hey, don't put down Las Vegas now. Come on, that's where one of my offices is.
How many houses do you have out there now? But with no money down, that whole crisis, that was truly a financial crisis.
Yes, it was. Yes,
and it was because banks had assets, the loans they made, that were absolutely worthless. There was fraud, and it almost brought the banking system down.
Kind of like the COVID loans, right? Similar? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No. So forward to now, or to at least a few months ago, the banks, especially a bank like Silicon Valley Bank, and you've all heard this ad nauseum, said, we're not going to make dumb loans. We're not funding water parks. With 2020, we're getting a lot of money in. Venture capital is being raised. A lot of money got poured into the economy from COVID and little PPP loans. There's money around. What we'll do is we're going to be the bank for technology. We're going to invest all this money in something really safe. We don't want to buy Treasury bills because the yields are too low. They were low then. We'll buy like 10-year government bonds. They yield at least 2%. That's safe. It's U.S. government bonds. And they said, fine, that's perfect. Now, fast forward to 2023. All of a sudden, the Fed's raised rates, and the banks, there's not so much money flowing around in venture capital anymore. And the venture capitalists who deposited all their money in the banks and made their investment companies open their account in Silicon Valley Bank and pay their employees right there, direct deposit in that bank. All of a sudden, someone noticed the very basic principle of bonds that all of you noticed a year ago when you looked at your investment returns. Bonds aren't safe, even if they're AAA rated U.S. government, best credit in the world, because there's interest rate risk. When interest rates go up, bond prices go down. Nobody wants your old 2% bond, even though it's a great credit, for the remaining 8 years, when they could get a 4% bond from the U.S. government for 10 years, same great credit. So if you go to sell your bond, what's it worth? I got $1,000 cash. I'm going to buy a 4% bond. Maybe it's worth like $700.
Sure.
And that's called the mark to the market. It's called interest rate risk. If you hold those to maturity, of course the government's giving you your $1,000 back. But if you need to sell before maturity, you have to pay the market price. Now, banks are not required to notice the market price because they had them in their assets, and they said we're going to just hang on to these till maturity. But all of a sudden, some of the smart money, the venture guys, the tech guys out there, and women, said, wait, they have how many billions invested in government securities? The mark to the market, the value, because rates have gone up, is lower. Let's take our deposits out. And this is not like a bunch of people lining up beside your local savings and loan back in 2008 to get their money.
Right.
This is people with billions of dollars, and in one day, billions and billions of dollars were withdrawn with the click of a computer.
Right.
And they had to rush to sell their bonds, and that was the out trade there. Okay. So we all learned last year in our 401k plans that you lose money in bonds just because bond prices go down when rates go up.
Sure.
The lack of liquidity is another issue, and marking to the market for the banks is another issue. So now where are we? We are, as we tape this, both 3 and 6 month T-bills are about 5%, a little above 5%, because there's a sense of Where's the money coming from? I'm not so sure. What are the banks going to do? Are they going to cut back on credit? I don't want to be in the stock market. Maybe the earnings won't be there if we have a recession. Interest rates typically were related to inflation.
Mm-hmm.
We're not having inflation's coming off, and yet short-term rates are still pretty high. Actually, the yield curve reflects the fact that short-term rates are higher than even 10-year rates.
Definitely.
Now, here's Terry's tip for the day. I hope you see this podcast before the 28th of April. I'm going to talk about Series I savings bonds. A year ago, in May, savings bond rate jumped to 9.62% on Series I bonds. It reflected 6 months of previous CPI inflation that was going crazy. It was up there at 8-9%. Then last October, the last week in October, people realized they had to get in on this to get that 9.62% because November 1st, the rates were going to drop. And they did. Now, by the way, when you buy your Series I savings bonds, and you can only buy 10,000 in any calendar year, you get 6 full months of the rate. So people knew. I mean, I was on TV and lots of other people saying, hey, here it is, October 21st. You can lock in 6 months of 9.62%. The Treasury website crashed. I know, I work with them closely. Well, let me say we're about to do that again in the coming few days. It won't be as dramatic because last November rates dropped on Series I bonds to 6.9%.
Yeah.
And now we're approaching the November 1st reset, and you have to get your order in by Friday the 28th to make sure you get 6.89%, because I'm here to tell you that the rate will drop to around 4%. It'll be a shock. You must hold savings bonds for a year. You cannot, if you sell before 5 years, you get a 3 months loss of interest penalty. Now, look, if savings bond interest rates go down, which they were very low, they were like at 1% for a long time. They were nothing. You could always say, well, I don't care about losing 3 months of nothing interest. You could get your money out and go do anything with it, go travel, whatever you want to do. But if you're trying to lock up 6 months of 6.89%, and then the next time you'll get the 6 months that's set November 1st, and we'll see what happens again next year, you have to do that at treasurydirect.gov. And if you go to terrysavage.com, there's a link called Everything You Need to Know About I-bonds. So there's my personal finance tip for the day.
And I always tell people, the bell doesn't ring at the top or the bottom.
Yes.
Please stop trying to be the guru. If you feel like the interest rate is fair, and it is, then lock it in. Don't try to, but I always get these questions. Well, Stan, but what if they, I don't know. If I knew that, I wouldn't be talking to you. Do the best you can. I always tell people, listen to their gut instinct and discernment, because that typically is a pretty good guide on making a decision instead of some sales pitch. But the good news about treasury.direct.gov is there is no sales pitch. It's you making a decision.
Yeah.
And listening to people like Terry Savage. Is this chicken money, Terry? Terry has a thing called chicken money. Tell them what chicken money is.
I coined this expression so many years ago, and now people know me for it. The market's always divided into the bulls and the bears. But right. I think at every stage of your life, we should divide it to the bulls, the bears, and the chickens. And you should have some chicken money. It's not because you're old and you just don't want to lose it. You want to make it last as long as you do.
Right.
It could be that you're younger and your son's going off to college next year. That's when you get chicken. I don't want to risk anything in the market. You're saving up for a down payment on the house, or just because at any stage of your life, this amount of money lets you sleep at night. Now, we're talking about people who have discretionary money here. I'm well aware that a lot of people it's sad that how many people are living not only paycheck to paycheck, but credit card debt is at the highest level ever, nearly $1 trillion.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, everybody promised, well, I'm never going to get in credit card debt again. New records in that. That's another story, and a vulnerability in our economy. But you're listening to Stan's podcast, so you have some discretionary money. Chicken money is nothing to be ashamed of. Yeah. It's what lets you sleep at night, and it's what lets you stick. Remember I said about the stock market, all those scary times? If you've gotten scared out, look what you would have missed. So it lets you stick with, I think, just your S&P 500 index fund. You don't have to beat the market, just be there, because you know that you're going to be okay. you have some chicken money. Now, right now, chicken money I always define as short-term FDIC insured deposits,
Absolutely. Yeah.
government-only money market funds. The banks are catching up. They lost lots of money, not first
Mhm.
because their rates were so low, but people didn't notice it until I rang
Right.
them. And second, because people got scared about leaving over $250,000 in the bank. I mean, if you're close to that limit, what are you doing? The best thing for chicken money today, I mean, you can only put $10,000 in I bonds and you're going to hold them 5 years. But 6-month T bills or 3-month T bills rolling over automatically, renewing staggered maturities. And then we'll come back to your MIGAs in a minute.
Uh-huh.
But if you got this money, it rolls over in US government Treasury IOUs. There's a global auction set every Monday where the rates are set. You agree to accept whatever the rate is. Go read the article at terrysavage.com. This is where you roll your money, your chicken money. And if
Great.
you have, last week, some of my 3 months rolled over, and it's like 5 point something percent, 5.1, I guess. I haven't checked exactly. And I went, wow, I was lucky those rolled over at on that particular date. Or you could do MIGAs. That's your turn. That's your cue. What's the other alternative? Because
Well,
this
you know, I did a video recently and it kind of went viral and it was based upon a conversation I had with a very nice couple from Alabama. And it got to the point where I said, hey, you've won the game. Why are you still playing? Because they didn't like market risk. They didn't know how to do it. And I said, we're at interest rate levels. This isn't Jimmy Carter. But if you have enough money and depending on the income need, you can never touch the principal and just peel off the interest. Never pay a fee. We're there again. And I think a lot of people, because if they, like me, they grew up in rural North Carolina and poor and we didn't have anything. And so you kind of have a chicken money mentality. But right now, the chicken money mentality works for you because you literally, between CDs, treasuries, money markets, and MIGAs, multi-year guarantee annuity, the annuity industry version of a CD, you can get good interest rates that are contractually guaranteed. You know, I always tell people at the end of the day, when you are in chapter 2 of your life, you need contractual guarantees. You don't need hypotheticals and theoreticals. You need to know where that income floor is coming from. And I just think right now, you know, people need to take off your analyst cap, take off your Gordon Gekko cap, lock in interest rates that are going to provide that lifetime income stream. And then always people go, well, Stan, what happens when interest rates go down? I'm like, can we cross that bridge when we get there? Up until then, let's live off the interest. So I think that's where we're at as a country. And for the savers and the 11,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day, there is an alternative to risk. I'm not saying you shouldn't be all in on no risk, but you can be if you want to be.
You know, how many people are out there trying to say what we're both trying to say?
A
Neither
lot,
of
but
us.
they're not doing it as well as us, Terry. You know that.
Okay, they're very few, I think. Everybody's tell you something. I know that. That's why I'm the antidote to that, because I sell nothing. This is really important. Nobody cares about your money as much as you do. And you have no excuse to say, well, I don't understand it. I just let Joe do it. He did it for my father. And when he died, I just let them do it.
No.
Please, this is a really critical turning point. This is where you, especially if you're probably of the demographic that's watching, that has some disposable money, but is really concerned. This is where you sort out your chicken money. You know, self-discipline is the essence of all decision making. You don't want to be making decisions out of panic. You need to set money aside and decide where it's going. And then I can't tell you, my son's in the business. All the years of low interest rates, they called me Terry Queen of T-bills, you know. But
you can take that. You can wear that sash, right? And that crown.
Because I also had equities and they did well. So yeah, I didn't make as much money as I could have on the upside, but I did fine. And I sleep well at night still. I think peace of mind is priceless.
Let's pivot a little bit. You know, I'm 6'6" tall, 6'7". So I have nothing against people that are vertically challenged, Terry. I really don't. But I want to talk about an article by a person that is vertically challenged. And for some of the conservatives listen to this podcast, please stay on the podcast when I mention his name, because we're going to talk about his article. And his name is Robert Reich. So I want us to kind of weigh in, because he is a smart guy. you know, for a lot of my listeners, he's going in the other direction politically. But I think one of the things in the country that we need to do a better job of as a whole is accepting other people's opinions, whether they be political or non-political, and not just framing them in a category. With that being said, we'll talk about the vertically challenged yet very smart Robert Reich.
Well, that's because I forwarded an article to you. Now, so let me give you some background. I have been since the early 80s a longtime friend, and I suppose back then a disciple of another vertically challenged economist, our staffer. He took me to the White House back in the 80s.
You're gonna steal that from me to when instead of saying short.
No, I'm
it,
not going to say
it's
not.
vertically challenged. I mean, it's
They stand. Both of them are very tall when they stand on their wallet.
I was just gonna say, somebody told me that once. I used that in a speech, and the guy that followed me goes, "If I sat down on my wallet, I'd be taller than Stan." I'm like, "Kudos, you're good. That's good. You're right."
Okay, so look, here's the reason I sent you. I just forward every once in a while. We Stan and I just correspond, and I'll forward him something that
Sure.
I get press release, and you know, I'm really basically a conservative economic person, and I
Sure.
believe that lower taxes create economic growth, and I don't think it's Democrat or Republican, because the biggest tax cutter of the last century happened to have been John F. Kennedy, who, by the way, was a Democrat, if you're too young to remember, and he got the top personal tax rate from 92% to 48%. So I'm okay, and Robert Reich is kind of in the other direction of that. But he made a very good point. Now, by the way, and I read his stuff because he's very smart,
Yeah,
and I
yes.
like to know what the range of thinking is.
Yeah, yes.
And so we're talking about this. The one thing, you know, there's always one thing. The pandemic was a thing. In the 80s, inflation was a thing. And I think the current thing, and it's approaching us like rapidly galloping at us, is the debt ceiling fight. That is insane. I'm gonna give you my own take on it. The debt ceiling came about in World War II when Congress couldn't authorize enough spending fast enough to gear up the factories and everything that was needed. So they just said, let's, you know, you guys, we're not making a budget. We're not going to budget everything. We'll give you a limit on how much debt you can go into to fight this war. And they said, fine. And they made, and you know, that took over the whole country basically during gearing up for World War II, and the factories and Rosie the Riveter and all that stuff and rations and everything. And surely America really rose to the challenge. Ever since then, I think we've raised that debt ceiling about 100 times and suspended it temporarily. And we've done it every single year. The debt ceiling is about money we've already spent. This is like a couple sitting there with the credit card bill going, and she's saying, you bought more fishing equipment. Well, I see you went to the store. What's this, shoes or clothes? I'm not paying the bill. Well, I'm not paying the bill. Meanwhile, their credit is going to hell. And I mean, maybe their wages are going to get garnished. Who knows what will happen? The debt ceiling is about the spending that was previously done. The budget that they're supposed to be coming up with is about the spending going forward. This brinksmanship on the debt ceiling is insane because, you know, first of all, remember the 2011 when they went to the wall on this. Stop paying for military payroll paychecks. You really going to let people go to the PX at the post? I mean, they can't pay their kids' tuition. They can't pay their kids' dancing lessons. But most significantly is we can't refinance our debt if we come to an abrupt halt here. That simply cannot be. Not when Xi Jinping or whatever his name is running around making buddies with everybody in Africa and Putin and everywhere else. This is unthinkable. And it will be in the headlines every day from now and come to a boil.
So what did Mr. Reich propose?
So as I recall what I said to you, he made a couple of points. He said, the media isn't doing a good job of talking about this. They're talking about this like, well, you Republicans are doing,
exactly.
You don't want to give student loan forgiveness. You don't want to do this, that, or the other thing. You all spent the money. And it's true, by the way. I mean, the stimulus checks came under both administrations and all programs. Okay. But this is two separate issues. First of all, the president did a very cool thing, I thought, in the State of the Union. He practically got everybody to stand up and say, yes, we would not cut Social Security and Medicare. That doesn't leave a lot left to cut in
Right.
spending arena. Interest on the national debt is now the third largest category and growing by leaps and bounds as rates go up. So the issue is not the debt ceiling, which is not a question of you bought fishing equipment, you bought shoes. Leave that behind. The issue is the budget going forward. And the budget going forward, sensible people can argue about. You already know, I believe, tax cuts grow the economy. Robert Reich does not. He's never seen a
No,
tax.
he's somewhat on the other side of that.
Exactly. But the fact is, they should be sitting down discussing a budget. Now, here's the problem. This is the facts. And now this is apolitical. The president has proposed a budget. He says, I'm not negotiating on the credit of the United States. It's a very, I mean, he's backed out of the headlines.
Yeah.
The Republicans have given away all these powers to all the extreme wings of the party, and they can't come up with a budget that they all agree on, that they like to negotiate with the president.
Right.
They want to do it. They've said some things. In their budget, there would be no student loan forgiveness. Okay. There would be no green tax credits. Wipe out some of the stuff from the American Recovery Act. There would be cuts to this, that, and other spending. Cut it back to 2020. Excuse me? Go sit down and negotiate that. But do not let the full faith and credit of the US dollar stand in question. And Reich made a good point. It's not equivalent. This is not a standoff about the debt ceiling or spending cuts.
Yeah, he's separated it as it should be separated, but it never is separated. It's talked about as one. And you know, the media, that giant sound, that clicking sound you hear, is everyone turning off watching it. The numbers for cable television is atrocious. People are getting their news from other places, i.e. podcasts. Now, the problem with that is it can be skewed one way or the other. But the point is, the media's done it to themselves. His comment about the media needs to do a better job is not smart, because it doesn't matter if they do a better job, because people aren't listening or watching anyway. Those numbers are atrocious.
Except on Fox News, despite everything in these recent.
Yeah, but even then, you're talking about a country of 300 million people, and they're capturing what, 3 million a night? Come on. That means that the other people have tuned out. And so a lot of this problem is people have tuned out, and there's nothing except for, people that watch these podcasts or listen to these podcasts. They're trying to get insight. And the reason they come here is they know they're not going to get sold on things. But I agreed with him on, we need to segment it. But, the smart people already have segmented it. That we live in a world of soundbite voting, where they're hitting people with sound bites and people vote on those sound bites. And we all know that. So that's the reason, Terry, I always tell my clients, there's no U-Hauls behind hearses, and fly first class or your kids will. That's my approach, meaning that live for the day. Don't get caught in the minutia of all this. You can't control it anyway. And the other thing, and I'll stop with this, we're going to go to something else. I always say, close your eyes and think of the dumbest person you know on the planet that you've talked to. When they vote, their vote gets rid of your vote. Okay, so do the best you can.
I've said that for years.
But just don't live and die with, what some talking head on either side tells you. I mean, that's their opinion, and they are there to get clicks and to get advertisement. And just remember that. Now let's pivot off that political stuff to,
Go ahead.
Can
I wave a red flag? You want to get people
a big one. Wave it. Go ahead.
I don't know where you were going. We don't plan this.
No, we don't plan this. Come on.
Okay. Guess what? I'm going to say two facts that seem contradictory. And I guarantee every single one of you out there is going to feel your blood boil in one way or another. The first fact is an absolute fact. And that is, if you have the ability, the finances to do so, you should absolutely wait to take Social Security until age 70. I'll come back
if you can.
Yeah, I said if you have the ability.
I'm just hammering that home, because I get these calls all the time, Terry, and I'm not a Social Security person, but I just say, listen, you don't have to listen to anybody. listen to you and what you need, right?
Okay,
Period.
but I'm talking about, this is not a mathematics. All right, let me explain why I said that first. And then I'm going to go to part B, and then I'm going to go to part C. Okay. The reason I say that is because there's a roughly 8% increase
Sure.
in your benefit per year in the years after age, whenever your full retirement age is, which may be 66 in so many months, or 67, it'll be pretty soon. You get an 8% increase. I'm not sure you're going to get that in the stock market, even though the historic long-term averages are 10% with dividends reinvested, because we've had those above average years.
But
But
let me interject though, because we're kind of muddying the waters here. In Stan's English, that means the older you are, the higher the payment, because your life expectancy is projected to be less, which means the payments will be higher.
right, but I know what you're all thinking. That's part B of this. Don't let me go there yet. But
Okay.
Social Security is the only annuity you will get that is indexed for inflation.
Thank you.
And if you have a higher base, then if there is inflation in the future, you will get more money. Now, I know you're doing the math. Well, I'm 65 now, and I think that, I mean, I don't want to bet because they're going to bet, and maybe they're going broke. That's part B. No, I want to get my money now. Look, longevity, ages are creeping up. This is not about whether you get out everything you deserve because you put in over the years. This is about what if you really are, because you're watching Stan's podcast, an above average person. I know this for a fact. Well, what if you live to an above average age? This is when maybe other money of your savings ran out and you're now 93. But at least you have the big Social Security check and the big cost of living increases that it brings. This is your heart aid in Las Vegas, isn't it, Stan? Perhaps any chip that you put down there to protect your position. Yeah, I know, I shoot cramps. What I'm trying to say is, this is the one piece of your retirement that will last you and keep up with inflation if you outlive the rest of your money. Now, part 2 of this is.
Wait a minute. I've got to do my movie analogy to that recommendation. Are you ready? The movie analogy to that recommendation is Braveheart, where Mel Gibson, they're lined up against the British and he's yelling to the people, hold, hold, and they're running toward him, hold, hold. That's what Terry's saying. But instead of like them spearing the horse, she's saying 70. How's that, Terry? How's that visual?
That was very good. I like that. Hold on. But now I know the reason they obeyed Mel Gibson. Okay, but that was 1,000. Oh, yeah, okay, absolutely. Or 2,000, whatever it was.
Well, they're going to obey you. You're Terry Savage. The savage truth.
I know what you're all saying because we have Stan's above average audience. 92% of you didn't really listen to what I said because you were thinking, but Social Security is going broke.
Yeah.
And you are right. Go to terrysavage.com. There are a bunch of Social Security articles up there. And the most recent one is Social Security is going broke. These recent COLAs you got, if you're already on Social Security, were not calculated into the formula. And 10 years from now, you are going to be in a position where Social Security will not be able to pay the full promised benefits. In fact, I'm going to look at the numbers
but they will. But they will.
Wait, don't steal my punchline.
I'm sorry.
They'll only be able to pay 77% because the so-called trust fund, which if you're old enough, you remember is a shoebox in Baltimore, Maryland with bills in it, but no, it's not. It's IOUs from the Treasury, but that's another story. Okay, there will be no reserves left in that trust fund that you trusted. The money that they can pay out of benefits 10 years from now will come from the people that are working and getting FICA deductions, and that will only be about 77% of what you were going to get. So instead of just sitting around having these stupid political debates about who spent most and who's to blame and destroying our credit when we're going to need to borrow, what we could be having Congress do, and I posted a whole long list of things guaranteed to make you scream, as I wrote that, and I rarely write like that in a column, but I said, I promise you one of these will make you scream, whether it's extending the FICA cap from 162,000 to all earnings, or delaying retirement age longer, or this, that, or the other thing. There are a bunch of things they could do to fix this. And as you just said, they're going to make those payments. We're going to be the largest group of people collecting Social Security. I mean, there are 90 million Social Security
And you know what you call those people, Terry, that are receiving Social Security?
voters.
They're called voters. Here, but I have literally come up with a way to salvage the whole Social Security system and to make it solvent forever. I'm going to fly to DC with you on your private jet, and we're going to fly in there. And here's my proposal, Terry. Every single person out there that says they hate annuities, they hate all annuities, immediately forfeit their Social Security annuity payment. And if we just did that, that would shore up the fund, because all of those idiot, misinformed people would not be getting their annuity payment from Social Security that increases with inflation. I think that's a rational proposal, Terry. And just tell me when the Learjet will be in to pick me up.
Yeah, it was from your mouth. By the way, a sidebar here, quick sidebar. I'm working on a big project about Social Security did you ever have Larry Kotlikoff on?
I don't know. Who knows?
Oh, the economist, Max, who wrote Get What's Yours from Social Security. And he has a website called MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com, $39, because we are collecting Social Security horror stories, and we have over 100 of them. Social Security, our benevolent, wonderful, gonna send us a check forever, is in the process of clawing back more than $8 billion.
Did you say claw back?
Yes, they're sending out letters. It started with a letter
from a woman gosh.
that and they want 88,000, and my husband died and I had a triple bypass. Go to terrysavage.com and just under the columns.
Oh my goodness.
They are, and guess what they say? And if you don't pay us, we're not going to send you any more benefits. So now we've got a widow who had a bypass surgery who wrote, I don't want to lose my house. And then when we started talking about it, if you go to my Ask Terry blog at terrysavage.com, tell me your Social Security horror story. We are documenting them and we're taking them to Congress. Speaking of Congress, which has reminded me, people who are seniors are living in fear, and they have docked the Social Security checks. One was a kid who was 5 years old when his mother claimed disability benefits for herself, and they're trying to claw it back from him. He's now a 20-something young man. I mean,
here's my question. First thing that hits me is, why am I hearing this for the first time from you? Why am I not hearing? Why isn't this on? This is new. This should be news. These are things that need to be solved, and everyone in the country voting 100% together would be like, that's not right. Let's solve that. Every single one.
All heard about IRS abuses.
Of course.
I mean but Social Security is like the benevolent, godfather that's paying you the money that you put in. But think of living in terror, and they can do that, and you can't talk to them, and they'll never tell you what it was. A lot of it is they miscalculated the benefits initially, which is why MaximizeMySocialSecurity.com is that I don't get anything out of it. Larry kind of gives away $39. That's where you go to make sure before you take your benefits, or even afterwards, that your benefits were calculated correctly. Because if they could make $8 billion with a mistake that they have to claw back, how do you know they're not underpaying you? It's a national scandal. We're gathering all these stories, take them to Congress, and I have some friends at 60 Minutes. I'd love to bring this story to them. It's really.
I need you on 60 Minutes. I need to turn on Sunday night and you pop up the money lady, the chicken money. We're talking chicken money. We're talking real money. We're talking Social Security. I think it's great. I don't know that's its own website. I'm sure you've thought of that, but I'm a marketer and brander, as you know. So I'm thinking
that, and I've been blessed in a lot of other ways. So I'm just here trying to help. Okay, your turn. What's your topic?
Long term. We talked some short term here. We've talked a little politics. We tiptoed and danced around it just as only as me and you can.
Yep.
Without offending. And what's long term on the horizon, Terry? What are we looking at financially? In your opinion, these aren't predictions and or recommendations. These are based on, I know she doesn't look like this if you're watching the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel, but decades of experience. Go.
Hanging there behind me. I've never, would you remember Boone Pickens' hockey puck?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
hockey stick. That was a hockey stick.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to that point now.
Getting to
And
the point where it's getting ready to pop.
I have been having this discussion since the early 70s about when the dollar would no longer, I mean, what you'd need.
Hmm.
Can I tell the story? I'll tell you the story. I was pregnant at the time in 1973, and I was with a group of the smart money people. I'd take gold. No, gold's too heavy to transport. Take diamonds. Well, then you have to have them certified. And, and I, that kind of a thing, and the Swiss, we should, I mean, literally in the 70s, you took money to Switzerland
Sure.
and I was very pregnant, and I said, I think I'd stockpile toilet paper, which was an immediate need at that moment. And guess what? It came through in the pandemic. But but I can say this because for 40 years, I've been among the people, and I remember some of their names, most of them have passed on now, who worried that the United States' ballooning debt would take us out of our role as the center of the world. And so I think while we play our own myopic games in Washington,
Hmm.
the big looming thing, and it looms in both financial and commercial ways, is the world order. We have maniacs. We've always had maniacs around the world, but it was one
Hmm.
thing. Castro was a maniac with missiles off our coast. It's another thing when Putin is a maniac with missiles all over the world. And then I think the looming thing is China. Like you, I believe that if we would get our act together like we do in every crisis,
Hmm.
but why wait for the crisis to be upon us?
Because we
Why,
always do. I
but
mean,
why?
that's just what we do.
Our strength is our economy. Our economic strength is our currency. The dollar is central to all world trade, especially oil. And the other thing now that is central to everything is technology.
Hmm.
And we look at what's going on with Taiwan, and I'm no expert on this, but I read that they make so much of our chips so that our economy is dependent on, what happened in the pandemic with supply chain, you couldn't get a new car. I'm talking about everything. I think the sad thing is that we are wasting our time with internal squabbles
Hmm.
when the real threat is to our global existence and our
Hmm.
leadership. Sorry, didn't mean to end with that kind of a,
No, no,
but
no. I think everyone's nodding and high-fiving the screen. Um, but I don't know what the solution is, because the people that we as a country seem to be continuing to vote in office aren't capable of doing those types of things. People always ask me, "Hey, I should really run for office," and you know that, Terry.
yeah.
But I couldn't take the pay cut. So,
Yeah,
I'm not sure I could interact with some of the low level IQ people on the Hill. It would drive me insane. But the point is, we do wait for chaos to hit before we change. And I'm like you. I wish we could be a little bit more proactive, but I think we are. I think the COVID woke us up a little bit from the standpoint of sourcing things and the supply chain. And I think you can't pivot quickly. It's like turning a cruise ship around in a port. We are going there and getting there, because at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, whether you admit it or not, capitalism does drive the whole thing. As long as there is incentive to make money and to become successful, however you define that, then there's going to be smart people taking risk. And taking risk is what this is all about. This country's all about that. That's why we're here. And people need to remember that. And I preach that to the youngsters like you do. And you can't just walk out of college and get the $140,000 mid-level management job.
yeah,
Period.
capitalism has created a higher standard of living
Hmm.
for more people than any system that was ever tried. Look, they were going towards capitalism in Russia, not now. Look at Cuba. I mean, that and
I
China's
mean, is
with
it perfect? No, nothing's perfect. Nothing runs 100% smoothly, and there's always glitches. But capitalism somewhat fixes itself, which is kind of interesting to watch.
given
Um,
the guidelines and given the
Mhm.
opportunity to work. But what we do with our political system is we adjust and distort incentives, And then we neglect to recognize that we're paying the price. So I'm not saying that there don't have to be some guidelines and some rail posts, but we do things like we say, okay, we're going to stop building this pipeline, top priority, new administration. And then we're at the mercy of, who are the exporters, become at the mercy of global powers. And we say, and we tell the energy companies, you're going to just have to give up this oil and gas, and everything's going to be clean in 10 years and so forth. But here's the latest one this past week. So we keep switching gears, and businesses don't make long-term investments. Oh, we're right in the middle of a war. Okay, now we need you to pump some more gas, pump some more oil, drill some more oil. Okay, how about the latest thing is, I can't figure this happened this past week. First, we're told we're going to be all electric in 10 years or whatever it is. 90% of the cars. I mean,
I don't believe it. Period.
Wait, and then we created incentives. Well, I know, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then we created incentives for people to buy electric cars, tax incentives. Okay, that's the way the real world works. People follow their best interests. And then we just announced that foreign cars are no longer going to qualify for EV incentives. Do we really care more? I mean, what is this, protectionism for our industry, or is it for our environment? There's not whatever side of this issue you stand on, you must admit that this whole thing has been quite irrational. And how can anyone either build a car plant or drill for energy? We're not going to be able to cut away from electric energy. And
No.
I gave a speech last week. This is what I do. People wonder, well, she's giving all this advice away. Yeah, free advice is worth what you
Learjet in, Learjet out.
No. I gave a speech. I do a lot of speaking for corporate groups and so forth. I gave a speech for I won't name the company, but they do all the electrical grid, the work on it. I mean, the pump and the energy grid and the natural gas and oil pipelines. I mean, they have work no matter what happens, whoever agrees to do this or that. They're fixing the old infrastructure. They're laying the new.
Sure.
And we have such a fragile infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
But their decisions, the decisions on the projects they make, are made years and years ahead. Now, here's what I now know. There is not enough electric capacity. For if we had if someone waved a magic wand and all the cars were electric and the air was clean, how are we going to power these cars? I live in a high rise in Chicago. It's an old post-war building. I said, I put a deposit on an electric car. They said, where are you going to put the charging thing? I know it's going to cost $1,000. I'll put it on the wall. I see an outlet there. No, we don't have enough electricity coming into the building to have everybody have a charger. You can go down to the basement, but you'll have to sign up for when. I said, wait.
Yeah, this is called feel-good politics. It's feel-good politics. It feels good, sounds good, but it's not rational. Terry, we're up against the clock. Let me hold on just a second. For everyone out there, if you haven't pinned this at the top of your computer, terrysavage.com. I'll spell that TERRYSAVAGE.com, all one word. You need to go there. It's a very good source. It's just objective information. No, she doesn't sell anything. She's just trying to help. But as you know, Terry, at the end of every single one of these that we do the mic drop moment where I count you down, and then you give us a walk away moment that will make people skip away smiling, chasing the butterflies as you give them words of wisdom on the way out. So here we go. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. Your biggest responsibility is not the decisions you make today about a MIGA or a Treasury bill or getting in on the I-bond or what percentage should be in equities. And it's not even your vote, although that's really important. If you're listening to this podcast, you're the above average and maybe a little bit above average age in America person. Your biggest responsibility is, if you nodded along to some, any, all, or most of this, is to go find some young person and teach them about the value of our American free enterprise capitalistic system. Teach them real history, not what people want to be taught to them. Teach someone younger. That's the biggest legacy you can leave. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well done, Terry Savage. And I'm so glad you joined me. Obviously, Terry, this isn't our last rodeo together. We're going to
Good.
catch up with you down the road as things always are changing in this country. But I want to thank every single person listening on all the major podcast platforms to Fun with Annuities. I think it's one of the fastest growing business podcasts out there. Should be. If it's not, I think it is, though. And all the people that are crazy enough to watch the Fun with Annuities YouTube channel and see my sweatsuit, which is light blue with the matching blue hat, and Terry's glamorous outfit and her palatial estate in the background. So thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.